Warning, the video you are about to watch is a totally true story that actually happened, and isn't just made to emulate early 2010s creepypastas. If you're easily frightened, turn back now. You should be no stranger to this if you watched my first video. This story could be hard for some to hear. I can't say I blame you if you have to turn back, but I have to share my story. My story started a few weeks ago. I've had my copy of Animal Crossing New Horizons since launch, so I have a lot done on my island. My Saturday morning started the same as always. I ate my breakfast and then hopped right onto my Nintendo Switch, starting up Animal Crossing New Horizons as I usually do. I've heard some people say this game can get very boring after a while, but I just don't understand how. I've played every single day since launch and it's still just as incredible as the day I got it. That was until this particular Saturday. My character exited my house as usual, but as he turned towards the screen from closing the door, I noticed he looked like he'd been stung by bees, which is interesting as I hadn't been stung by bees in years, since I got so good at catching them back in the days of city folk in my city of Dreamville. I wasn't really creative with names back then. I continued to walk around like I usually do, this time contemplating how I was stung. I pinned it on my brother since he hates the games, so I figured he was just trolling me and thought it'd be funny. But when I talked to Goldie, she said it looked like I had been more than just stung by bees. She said it looked like something worse had happened, and that the pus in my eye was worrying her. I blew it off and just went on to my other daily stuff, watering my flowers, selling stuff, fishing, so on. Then Rosie approached me. She started saying something, and then the game just shut off. This scared me a little, as the last frame before the game shut off was Rosie talking, as the text box just had gibberish in it. Sure, Rosie's kind of a weird character, and her just making weird noises just to mess with the player doesn't seem out of character. This is weird. It had some sort of energy to it. Energy that I didn't like. I started the game back up as I hadn't finished my stuff yet. I still had to go check the Able Sisters shop. As my character opened the door and once more turned to the cameras, his eyes were all black, and his mouth wasn't the normal smile I had. He looked like he was frowning. I once again blew this off, as it didn't really seem like something detrimental. Maybe Nintendo added something really creepy for Halloween? I chuckled. I walked to the clothing store, ignoring what was in the window, as I usually do. Mabel greeted me slightly differently today. She said, "Hey there, don't you know it's bad luck to come into our shop after a villager leaves?" Which caught me off guard since nobody had moved. Or so I thought. I checked my map to see that someone had actually moved, and sure enough, Rosie no longer lived on my island. This scared me a little more since only minutes before Rosie had started talking to me, and then the game had crashed. I noticed the door in the back of the store behind Sable was open, but I couldn't get to it as the porcupine was standing in the way. But as soon as the bells chimed indicating noon had arrived, the sisters walked to the door in the back and told me I'd be best to leave. I ignored their warning and entered the room only a couple minutes after them. What I saw had shocked me. The room was covered in red, and there was a lot of flesh-colored stuff on the floor. Then Mabel approached me from the darkness and said something along the lines of, "I told you, it's not safe to be in here. Now you get to see the ugly process of how we make clothes. Here, why not help us?" But as I started working, the lights turned on and revealed a huge selection of colored fabric, as well as the red and fleshy pink fabric. I got worried over nothing. After my shift at the Able Sisters, I left the store and went where Rosie used to live. And in the house's place was a lost item. Upon picking it up, I was told to visit Goldie again, so I did just that. Goldie commented on the black voids I had for eyes, stating that they creeped her out and that my costume was super cool. I of course couldn't tell her that it wasn't a costume. My Nintendo Switch once again turned off, closing the game with it. I booted the game back up again. Frustrated, I thought surely not even my brother would do something like this. It wasn't someone just trolling me. I had to accept that my game was either hacked or cursed, and I wasn't gonna like the answer. As my character stepped out of his house, it was pleasant to see that he was normal again. But what wasn't normal was the fact that KK Dirge was playing in the background. Now, if you don't know what a dirge is, I'd be more than happy to tell you that it's often used to refer to a lament for the dead, a lament being an expression of sorrow. This scary song played ever so softly and quietly as I wandered my now barren island. But house. I of course had to visit my favorite blue cat friend, but when I went into her home she turned towards the camera and she now had black void eyes. She told me to go visit Goldie, which I thought was weird since she was the only other person on my island other than myself, but I decided maybe if I leave her house it'll be normal again. But it wasn't. Now Goldie was the only other resident on my island. I braced myself for what was to come as I knew my favorite dog villager was going to have those same eyes, much like Rosie. And I was right. I entered her house and she stared not at my character, but at me with these terrifying voids. I started to tear up. My island, my villagers, my work, everything was consumed by this curse. I pressed onwards and talked to Goldie. She said one thing to me, one thing that made me shiver a little. Go tell Fauna that she better prepare to be cooked into dinner tonight. It was scary to think of my villagers being at each other's throats like this, but I knew if I didn't go talk to Fauna, I'd lose yet another one of my people. I found Fauna out wandering on the island, but like everyone else, she had those black eyes. By this point I was in full-on tears. I talked to my once friend. The text box appeared, but no words. Nothing for seconds, and then my system let out a horrible sound. And then the text box disappeared. I was now out of leads. Rosie had told me to talk to Goldie, Goldie had told me to talk to Fauna, and now Fauna hadn't said a word. I left her alone, knowing I couldn't stop her from being eaten, and my island was silent. No music, which was a little more pleasant than that cursed KK song, if I'm being honest. I wandered aimlessly, trying to see what I could or couldn't do, but then I had realized Rosie was the one who told me to talk to Goldie. So did that mean I have to return to the cat? I once again entered Rosie's house and talked to her. The game crashed exactly like it did the first time. I tried rebooting it from the Nintendo Switch home menu, but it simply said, "This game is unavailable to someone like you." Then I heard a knock at my door. I reluctantly stood up to answer it. As the door slowly opened, KK Synth started playing, another fairly scary song in Animal Crossing. I stepped out the door into a landscape I didn't fully recognize, but shortly after I started to look around, it hit me. I was on my island. I was on my Animal Crossing New Horizons island. I didn't really know what to do. Everything was normal as it is in the game. I just was here now. KK Synth slowly started to fade out, and the 12 p.m. music faded in, almost to signify that it was all normal now. I went to Rosie, and she gave me some of her normal dialogue she would say. Then to Goldie, same case. Then to Fauna, same case. I entered the sister's shop. Normal. I was the only odd variable here. For years now I've said I would love living in this world, and for the first week or so it was amazing. Didn't have any responsibilities, but then I started to hear the same things over and over daily. Goldie telling me, "Let's try to make this our best day yet," every morning. Became annoying. Rosie telling me the same thing about fashion and home decor daily. Became really annoying. I wake up every day and go do all my daily things, watering my flowers, selling stuff, fishing, so on. But I feel something more and more painful every day. I miss my friends, my family, being able to do things that aren't within the limits of this cheerful game about living with your animal neighbors. This is my story. Be careful what you wish for. Be careful what kind of games you play. If this makes it to the real world, then my friend has been opening her mail and is slowly writing things down. At least I can still talk to a few people, but only those who play Animal Crossing. And having to wait 24 hours per reply from them is a long time when I usually hear back within a minute of texting them in real life. But I have to go now. I have flowers to water. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you for watching. This is a lot longer than my previous one, as well as a lot more of a serious story, considering the ending of the previous one compared to this one. But once again, I felt like I'd do something a little bit fun for Halloween this year, considering I still can't really find these kind of cheesy early 2010s creepypastas. So why don't I just make them myself? Thank you for watching and have a wonderful night.